2022 CR 1331. State of Texas versus Raymond. Alejandro. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state?
Travis Banks for the state of Texas.
Ruben Herrera for the state of Texas.
Matthew Allen for the defense.
Ruben Pisania for the defense.
And are you Mr. Alejandro?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So my understanding is we're to have a hearing on experts. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, state, call your witness.
State calls Samuel Abrego.
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. Can you raise your right hand for me?
Yes,
Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand if you'll state your name for the record and spell it, please.
My name is Samuel Abrego, Samuel Abrego.
All right, state.
How are you currently employed?
I am the forensic interviewing manager at ChildSafe.
And what is your educational background?
I have a bachelor's degree in architecture from 2006 UTSA. And I also have prior experience working as a CPS investigator.
And to become a forensic interviewer, do you have to have any special training?
Yes, you do.
What sort of training is required?
So there's primarily 3 blocks of training that you have to go through to become a forensic interviewer. Block 1 is called forensic interview training, semi-structured narrative process, in which you go deep into what that CAC of Texas model is of conducting forensic interviewing. Block 2 consists of beyond the sexual abuse. So that is more in-depth training regarding to different types of allegations and types of interviews, such as physical abuse or neglect. Block 3 is more of an advanced forensic interview training. It also goes deep into preparation of court.
Did you complete all 3 blocks?
I did.
Okay. And are you, is there any accreditation process?
No.
Okay. So you complete the training and then you can be hired as a forensic interviewer.
You can be hired prior to that. There's an option that there's a period of observation where you're observing forensic interviews first. That's part of the training, and then you go to the blocks.
Okay. And so you've completed all the training, the observation, everything that is required to become a full-fledged forensic interviewer.
That's correct, sir. I've completed additional trainings beyond that as well.
Do you have to complete continuing education?
Yes, annually.
And do you supervise any other interviewers?
Yes, so my primary role right now, apart from conducting forensic interviews, is providing support and guidance to the forensic interview team, but also help train new forensic interviewers.
And do you ever, in your role, train other forensic interviewers?
Yes.
Okay. And how many forensic interviews have you conducted in your career?
Around, on average, right now, 2,200.
2,200. Okay. And have you ever testified in a case as a forensic interviewer?
Yes, I have.
Do you know about how many cases you've testified in?
4.
As a forensic interviewer?
As a forensic interviewer, interviews where I've conducted the interview myself,
Okay.
but sitting in for another forensic interviewer twice.
Okay. Twice. Is that counting this time?
Yes.
Okay. And do you keep any records in your position?
Of the forensic interview itself?
Sure. Do you keep records of the interviews?
Yes.
Do you keep records whenever you come to court?
At times.
Okay. Let's talk about the techniques that a forensic interview uses. Is there research or scientific, theories related to the techniques that you use?
Yeah, so I'm trained through the CAC of Texas model, which is called the semi-structured narrative process. it's research based. It was formatted based off of best practices on how to conduct a forensic interview.
Okay, and those best practices and those theories, were they peer reviewed or subject to peer review and publication?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is there a high or known potential rate of error
Error as in no.
when employing those techniques? Does the scientific community find there to be a high rate of error?
No.
Okay, and do those theories, the scientific theories that we've discussed regarding your techniques, enjoy general acceptance in the scientific community?
Yes, they're widely accepted.
Oh,
And-
and I'm sorry, just one second. Just to interrupt briefly, based upon what you all were, I guess, conferring about off the record, is this the person who did the forensic interview or no?
No, Your Honor.
All right, so is the issue that he's not an expert, or is the issue that he's not the person who did the forensic interview?
I mean, it sounds like already, that he would qualify as an
So
expert.
you're stipulating that he is an expert.
Yes, it sounds like it. Do you guys have a CV for him?
I don't have one on me. Do you
But
have?
it sounds like the real issue is how he's going to testify about someone else's interview.
All right, so here's the question that the court has, and maybe we can narrow it, because I
Yes.
always like to narrow what the issue is. So it appears that the defense, and correct me if I'm wrong, defense, you're not objecting that this person is an expert.
Correct.
All right, so the defense then is stipulating that he's an expert, correct?
Yes, Judge.
All right, so the only issue is, and if we could get to the point, did he conduct the interview? Did he not conduct an interview? What did he do as it relates to the interview?
Right, Your Honor. And so what the state is putting this witness on the stand for is he did not, just to get to that point, he did not conduct the interview. A different forensic interviewer conducted the interview. She's not available for trial. The reason why we're putting him on, one, is to explain as an expert why it's important to have forensic interviews.
Okay.
And the state thinks defense opened the door to that yesterday in their questioning of Cepeda, suggesting that we needed to get all these answers quickly by someone who
So-
wasn't trained.
Are you just calling this witness to tell the jury what a forensic interviewer's role is and why officers have someone interviewed by a forensic interviewer? Is
Well,
that,
in addition to that, he did review the video. And I think as an expert can base expert opinions on items that they would find in the field. And so if he is an expert testifying about these procedures, this expert who has reviewed the video can also talk about things like the complainant's demeanor on the video, things like.
was he present during the interview?
No, he was not present during
All
the
right.
interview. However, as an expert, the rules of evidence allow an expert to base their expert opinion on items that they would find in the field, such as a forensic interview video.
All right. Now I know where the problem lies. So, and I'm taking that as the state's proffer. Do you have any objection to the court taking that as their proffer? Then I can hear your argument.
No, Judge, I don't have an objection as to their proffer for that.
Okay. All right. So you may step down. And I'm going to hear the argument on that, but let's get the next witness. Who's the next expert?
The state calls Julie Vereen.
All right. And then defense, I will, of course, give you a chance to argue over whether or not he should be allowed to testify as it relates to what he viewed on video.
Thank you, Judge. And I'll tell the court, we're not debating whether Julie Vereen is a nurse or an expert. Really, the only question is the ultimate, is she going to come to some sort of ultimate conclusion? And what is that? So.
All right, so
it's
do you
very
all,
limited.
she is here. The defense is saying that they're not going to object to her being an expert. The only issue I guess the defense want to know is she's going to testify to what her conclusion is. And would this be a conclusion on whether someone is telling the truth or not? What type of conclusion are we speaking about?
I guess I just want to make sure that there's not going to be a conclusion about the veracity or truthfulness of it. And then also, from my reading of it, there's no finding of something that's consistent with sexual assault. So that there's no testimony that because there was no finding that's consistent with sexual assault.
There wouldn't be, we wouldn't be seeking a conclusion as to the veracity of the victim state or the complainant's statements in this report. The only conclusions we would ask for are basically in sexual assault cases involving only touching, such as this case, number one, would she expect to find any findings is what we'd be asking.
I think those questions are appropriate. Defense, it'll just be something that you'll need to take her up on cross on.
Yeah, and the only other finding or the only other conclusion we would ask her about in the report, it does state that that the history suggests that the history provided by the complainant suggests sexual abuse, and so we would seek to draw out that statement.
All right, and so that you'll just need to cross-examine her on defense.
Okay, just for the record, I would object to those. I don't see how that helps the jury in any way, that there's no finding of it. And then also that the history suggests sexual abuse, I think does go to the veracity of what she believes.
All right. Well, you may want to cross-examine her on that, but are you stipulating to the fact that she is an expert?
Yes, Judge, I'm
All right.
I believe that the state will prove up her qualifications.
So you can ask your questions and defense, you'll be able to cross-examine the witness. All right. And before I hear your argument on the forensic interviewing where they're allowed to testify on that limited matter related to what they viewed, I will allow you all to formulate your arguments. I'm going to take up this plea and then I'll hear your arguments on the record. So that'll give you a chance to get your arguments together.
Thanks. And just to confirm, as far as the proffer of the forensic interviewer, he's not going to be giving any conclusion as to veracity. Is it that things are
No.
consistent with sexual abuse or anything like that?
The state, I don't think the state is arguing that he even can talk about the veracity or truthfulness or anything to that point of the forensic interview video.
All right. So I'm going to take this plea up and then you all can start formulating your arguments and I'll hear those arguments.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. The parties on Charles Harris. Are you able to switch over and ready, Diana? And is this an application for probation or no? All right, this is not an application. Thank you. Court is calling 2023 CR 3960, State of Texas versus Charles Anthony Harris. Can I have parties announced for the record for the state? Defense? And are you Mr. Harris? Counsel, have you received all the discovery and did you review it with your client? Court will find that the state is in compliance with discovery. Mr. Harris, I'm showing you what's entitled True Bill of Indictment. Did you review that with your attorney? Did you understand it? Counsel, do you waive the reading of the indictment?
Yes, sir.
State, are you proceeding on the indictment as presented?
We are waiving the repeater.
Any objection? All right, Mr. Harris, I'm showing you what's entitled Court Admonishments and Defendants Waivers and Affidavit of Admonitions. Did you review that document with your attorney? Did you understand it? Did you sign it in all the appropriate places? Did you understand you're charged with the offense of assault on a peace officer or judge, bodily injury? That's a second-degree felony. The range of punishment is anywhere from 2 to 20 years in prison and up to $10,000 fine. Did you understand? If you have a plea bargain agreement with the state, the court does not have to follow your plea. If for any reason the court doesn't follow your plea and gives you more than you bargained for, the fact that you entered a plea will not be used against you and you will be allowed to withdraw your plea. Did you understand? Did you understand you have a right to jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses the state will call in the right to remain silent? Did you understand by entering this plea bargain agreement, you were giving up those rights? And did you intend to give up those rights and enter into a plea in this case? Counsel, has your client been able to provide you with any defenses? Do you believe he has a rational as well as a factual understanding of the charges against him? Do you believe he's currently competent and was legally sane at the time of the offense? Mr. Harris, has anyone threatened you, forced you, or placed you in fear to get you to enter this plea? Has anyone promised you anything other than the plea? Are you satisfied with the way you've been represented? Are you a U.S. citizen? Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived his right to jury trial Showing you the plea bargain page. Did you review that with your attorney? Did you understand it? According to the plea, punishment is to be assessed at 4 years in the prison, and there are no applications. Did you understand that to be the plea? Defense? State?
Yes, sir.
Showing you the paragraph entitled waiver of appeal paragraph. Did you review that paragraph with your attorney? Did you understand it? And did you sign it in both places? Did you understand by signing that you're waiving your right to appeal? The only items that can be appealed are written pretrial motions that have been filed, heard, and ruled upon by the court. Did you understand? Counsel, have there been any such motions?
No.
Then to the offenses charged, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest? State any evidence? Showing you what's entitled waiver and consent to stipulation of testimony and stipulations. Did you review that document with your attorney? Did you understand it? Did you sign it in all the appropriate places? Again, did you understand you have a right to jury trial, a right for you or your attorney to cross-examine and confront any witnesses the state would call in the right to remain silent? Did you understand that today the state will be presenting evidence in the form of witnesses' statements and police reports, but most importantly, there will be no live testimony? Did you understand? Court will find that defendant has knowingly and voluntarily waived and consented to stipulation of testimony and stipulations. Court will accept into evidence states exhibits 1 and attachments and review the same. All right, after reviewing states exhibits 1 and attachments, the court will find there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty, and the court will find you guilty. Are you proceeding with sentencing?
Yes,
Anything you wish to say on behalf of the client?
Yes, my client has participated greatly in the homeless situation here in town. And he told me he has a sick mother and he's trying to get his life back in order. He believes based on all these facts.
All right. The court will follow your agreement, sentence you to 4 years in prison, and give you credit for any time served. Showing you what's entitled trial court certification of defendant's rights to appeal. Did you review that with your attorney? Did you understand it? And did you sign it? Because this is a plea bargain agreement, because I followed your plea bargain agreement, and because you waive your right to appeal, you do not have the court's permission to appeal. Do you understand? Because this is a felony conviction, you're not allowed to own or possess any weapons or ammunition. If you have a question of what a weapon and what ammunition is, you'll need to speak to an attorney. Do you understand? All right, we can go off the record. How old are you? All right, it's getting to that point where you're in the twilight of your life. I can say that because I'm in the twilight of my life. I have more of my life behind me than I do in front of me, unless I'm planning on living beyond 100. Here's the thing, with this case, you are now going to be flagged as a habitual if you pick up any other felonies, you understand? And some felonies, if you pick those up and you're habitual, your minimum sentence is 25 years in prison, you understand? So I understand there's a homeless situation, but at the same time, there's a homeless situation. People do not like people trespassing on their property or trespassing on their businesses. There are plenty of places in San Antonio that are free to stay. There are plenty of opportunities. If you have a drug or alcohol problem, if you have a mental health problem, that's all available. Do you understand?
I just had a daughter graduate. I missed her graduation. She's going to Florida State. My mother's telling me that she's falling. She's getting an A.
So what, you know what that means?
That means get it together.
You got to get it together.
And, I was out there actively with the community over on Hayes Bridge, helping with homeless. They started this program over there for building the house off Mitchell's Road.
Mhm.
So I was involved in that, and the area where I was at was like Grace Lutheran Church.
Mhm.
So I was on my way to get something to eat in the office. I don't get in trouble. I was also working with Officer Ratcliffe. He's one of the officers that works with the homeless.
Mhm.
So the officers out there that know me that I'm not a troublemaker. I did go down before, but coming out in COVID, I was also the one that helped shut the city down. COVID attack because the people out there getting sick. So I was actively influenced the community. helping
You're
the
saying.
community, so I'm not just a troublemaker.
Okay, so you're gonna have to do better, you understand? And if your mom needs you and is dependent on you, and if you have children who are dependent on you and you want to be there for their milestones, you're gonna have to do better. Oh, there you go. Don't be, but the most important thing, don't continue to be a grandfather at the prison. You understand?
I started my own business, home improvement remodeling. So by me having mental health issues, I wanted to invest painting and remodeling the koi fish ponds and gazebos for sanctuary. So that's my next, before this incident had happened, that's what I was.
All right, well, make you do that. One of my friends has a koi pond, and you know what ended up happening? A hawk came and took advantage of the koi.
Wow.
And no, the hawks ate the koi. And you know what they did? She said they did it to let her know what they had did. They put the bones down on her back patio. So they ate it and then here you go. Here's your koi. So, but do better, all right? Okay, good luck to you. Okay. And everyone, just give me 2 minutes. Please. Sean, I found it. All right, so the court is ready to hear argument with regards to the forensic interview. State. You
It's
can
our
put on
witness,
record
so
what
we
your
probably-
proffer is.
Yes, Your Honor, or I'll sit down.
Yes.
The state would like to call forensic interviewer Samuel Abrego to speak on matters relating to how forensic interviews are conducted, why they're important. The state is arguing to some degree defense already opened the door to that testimony yesterday when they questioned Deputy Cepeda
Right.
about.
And Counsel, I don't think the defense is objecting to
Okay,
his testifying concerning this is what forensic interviewers do. This is
Sure.
how they do it. I think defense, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to be objecting to the forensic interviewer that the state is calling testifying to an interview that he saw but did not conduct. Is that correct?
Well, both really. The first one, or I guess the second one in that instance, but the first one, just him testifying about forensic interviews generally. I don't know how, without the actual forensic interviewer here, I don't know how that helps the jury determine any issues. So I don't see how it's relevant at all for him to just give general testimony about forensic interviews.
All right, with regards to the objection to the witness testifying what forensic interviews are, the importance of forensic interviewing, that objection will be overruled.
and so the state will move on to the second matter, which is the state would also proffer that same witness, which the state will note that defense has stipulated to him being an expert. The state was proffering him as an expert just on his forensic interviews on that topic, conducting them, how they're supposed to be conducted, the protocols, et cetera. The state would proffer him as an expert on that topic. And as an expert on that topic, I think the rules of evidence would allow him to testify based on his expertise and to analyze different items of evidence and based on that can offer an expert opinion of the evidence that he reviewed to the extent that that evidence is relevant to this case and would help the jury to better understand the issues in front of it.
Defense.
Judge, just one thing, I don't see his name on the witness list.
Samuel Abrego.
And maybe I'm missing it. There was a second one. Let me
Turn off the one where he's on it.
but I can continue to the.
Yes.
Okay. Just as far as him testifying to someone else's work, I mean, we know that there's protocols in place as far as an interview. He wasn't there. He wasn't the supervisor at the time. So I don't know
That
how.
objection will be sustained with regards to the forensic interviewing testifying what he witnessed by video of someone else's interview.
Thank you, Judge.
And then with regards to him being on the witness list, was he on the witness list or not?
It's not on the one I have here. And I don't know. I could be
Filed May 31st. We'll print it off. It's
Okay.
We have a copy.
All right, defense, are you stipulating that
Well,
you have the name on the witness list? State if you would like
it will be
to.
printed in seconds, Your Honor, and we can get them a copy of it so they can see for themselves.
And Judge, the state, well, we're on a little bit of a break. The state notified me they were gonna introduce when the nurse testifies her report. So there's arguments about redactions. I don't know if the court wants to take that up now.
What redactions to the report?
You're right. There was redactions made to the SANE report that Julie Verino testified to regarding any mentioning of any other incidences outside of the incidents that's at issue in front of the jury in this
All right.
case.
The state has said they've redacted the portion that mentions any other instances.
Well, I have some other.
What other items?
So going back to the nurse, if I could approach it, going back to the nurse testifying as far as being consistent with sexual assault or anything like that.
All right, I've already made my ruling on that.
I understand, Judge. The Salinas case goes into that. But as far as the report itself, there are some things that we don't believe would actually be for medical opinion, and so it's just hearsay. I don't know.
What would that be?
You guys have a, I can. So. Well, one, we would object that the whole narrative is just hearsay.
All right, so which part are you saying is not a medical opinion?
Well, that whole narrative, I don't think is goes to a medical opinion, but, more specifically, so we object to the whole report, but it's, at the bottom there shows you make good eye contact or anything like that, I'm not sure how that goes, how that helps with somebody's medical opinion.
All right, you'll need to make your objection at the time. But with regards to those,
Okay,
whether or not it's a medical opinion will depend on how the testimony plays out and what the doctor says.
okay, I
Yes.
just didn't know if the court wanted to take it up, but I'll make the objections at that time.
All right, thank you. Are both parties ready to proceed?
State's ready.
All right, we can bring the jurors in.
All right, for the jury.
He did. Yeah.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And I'm sorry about our late start. I had a couple of cases that went from the morning to the afternoon. And I always like to make sure that the court reporter has a break because her fingers are going constantly. All right, state, call your next witness.
State calls Samuel Abrego.
Does someone want to get him?
He should be coming in, Judge.
All right. All right, if you can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, just make sure you keep your voice up so that the jurors and the court reporter can hear. If you'll state your name for the record and spell it.
First name is Samuel, last name is Abrego, Samuelabrego.
All right, state.
Thank you, Your Honor. How are you currently employed?
I'm the forensic interviewing manager at ChildSafe.
Okay. And what is your educational background?
I have a degree in architecture from UTSA.
And how long have you worked at ChildSafe?
I've been at ChildSafe since November of 2017.
Okay. And what is a child advocacy center?
So at the center at the CAC that I work, it's the only CAC here in Bexar County.
Mhm.
We provide services such as the forensic interview and also support services for the families that we serve and counseling services as well.
And to become a forensic interviewer, does a person have to go through any special training?
Yes, sir.
What sort of training must one complete?
So specifically, it's a series of 3 modules, 3 blocks, forensic interview training, block 1, which is an introduction to the actual forensic interview itself. It's called the semi-structured narrative process, which is the model that we are trained under through the CAC of Texas. Block 2 consists of beyond just this allegation of sexual abuse. It's diving further deep into interviews such as physical abuse or neglectful supervision. The 3rd module is a little more, it's a little more of an extensive training, more of an advanced forensic interview training. It also helps you prepare for testimony.
And in addition to the training modules, is there any on the job training where someone would work in the field or observe in the field?
Yeah, so there's an observation. Our jobs is very feedback heavy. And so something that we really benefit from is called peer review, which we gather. And we have two ways that we conduct peer review, where we give each other constructive feedback on our interviews and we learn from it. We do it in-house within the CAC itself. We do it externally as well within other forensic interviewers in the state of Texas.
Okay. And have you completed both the training modules and the in the field training?
Yes.
Okay. And you're a forensic interviewer now?
Correct.
And do you supervise any other forensic interviewers?
Yes, I do. So my primary role is to provide support and guidance to the FI, the forensic interviewing team here at ChildSafe. Also to conduct forensic interviews, like you said, but to help train new forensic interviewers.
And about how many forensic interviews have you conducted?
About 2,200.
All right. And with regard to forensic interviews, are there theories relating to how they're conducted?
Yes, sir. Like research and best practices on how to conduct a forensic interview. Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with those techniques and those theories?
Yes.
At ChildSafe, do you guys have specific protocols that your interviewers must follow?
We do. So there's our policy there at ChildSafe of the forensic interview process and the flow, the appointment flow. But regarding the actual forensic interview itself, there's a specific model, like I said, that we follow from the CAC of Texas that has a series of multiple steps.
And those protocols that you use at ChildSafe, are they also research-based?
Yes.
Okay. And what are some examples of the protocols that y'all follow there?
So the actual model that we follow, it's called the semi-structured narrative process. The forensic interview is broken down into different steps. So it begins with a report phase of the interview. Basically what that is getting to know the child, creating that comfortable space and environment so that the person feels comfortable speaking with you. From there, we go into transition to what is called an event narrative practice. Basically what that is that we're trying to elicit an actual event where the children can explain to you step by step from beginning to end what happened, so that when we go into introduction of topic of concern later down the interview, that's the way that we want them to respond to our questions. Upon completing that, we transition to an explanation of rules. For example, if I ask something that they don't understand, or if it sounds confusing, that it's okay for them to let me know and I can ask in a different way. Also, too, we explain that if I ask, like, for example, if I were to get something wrong or make a mistake, that it's okay for them to let me know, correct me. Also, too, that if we ask something that they don't know or that they don't remember, that it's okay and it's important for them to let us know. From there, we transition to what's called truth, lie, oath. We have them define what it means to tell the truth. And what does it mean to tell a lie? And if they agree to tell or talk only about the truth. From there, we go into, for example, tell me the reason that you're here today. And we explore that by asking open-ended questions. So all the questions we ask are non-leading, they're open-ended. The primary goal of the forensic interviewer is to elicit a narrative response from the child, because research has shown that that's the best way to retrieve accurate memories. And so to go back, break that down, gathering details further about what happened and what the statement is. And then there's a closure part of the interview, and we end the interview on a neutral topic.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit more about like specific research topics on the topic of research. So what do you know about like the concerns of suggestibility? How do you kind of avoid that? What's the research?
Well, that's one of the main goals for as an interviewer, right? To always be neutral at all times, to be non-leading, and to make sure that the interview is objective.
Do you guys use anatomical dolls or diagrams?
We don't use dolls, but we do use the drawings. Yes.
Okay, why would you use an anatomical doll or a diagram?
So we use a diagram, we call them anatomical drawings, and we use them for two purposes: identification of private areas, private parts on the body, and for clarification purposes.
Okay. And why is it important at the beginning of the interview to ask if they know the difference between a truth and a lie?
It's vital. It's a vital component part of the interview. And we interview kids as young as 2.5 years old, and there's examples that we can give just to kind of help them grasp that concept. But it's by law, we do have to ask.
And is there any research about, how the interview instructions should be given? Anything like that?
They have to be explained, and the explanation should be tailored to the child's age, and where they are developmentally, or their cognitive abilities.
And is there any discussion about like disclosure, whether it be accidental or purposeful,
At the time during the interview itself?
or any considerations with regard to that?
So the forensic interview appointment flow consists of a pre-staff meeting before the forensic interview. Now, what a pre-staff meeting is a meeting with our MDT partners. Our MDT partners consist of law enforcement and CPS investigations. We'll have a short meeting prior to the forensic interview and discuss simple like demographic information, what's being alleged, what information is needed from the interview itself, and what services possibly have already been completed prior to the forensic interview. After the pre-staff, we begin the forensic interview itself. When the forensic interview itself is already completed, we do a quick post-staff on any recommendations or any follow-ups or referrals that need to be made.
When the interviewer is conducting the interview, what are their objectives? Are they there to elicit the responses, or are they there to look for certain things or to figure things out? How would you characterize that?
My job is very simple, and the way I like to explain it is that my job is to make sure that the environment's a safe place for the kiddos to talk and communicate. And second of all, my job is just to simply help be a guide to so the kiddos can best communicate their story or whatever they need to say or their statement.
Okay. And why is it important that a forensic interviewer specifically interview a child as opposed to, say, a patrol officer with no formal training in forensic interviews?
Well, first of all, we specialize. There's multiple reasons. But first of all, because we specialize in that area, we're experts in that area. It's a safe, comfortable environment. It's an appropriate environment to talk to these kiddos. And second of all, we're a neutral party. And another reason why is you want to minimize the amount of time that the kiddo has to retell their story, and that could possibly traumatize the child.
And I want to touch on what you said a moment ago about a neutral party. Do you work for law enforcement?
I do not.
Okay. Are you a peace officer?
No.
Have you had any training to become a peace officer?
No, sir.
Okay. When you're discussing things in an interview and asking questions, one question that I'm curious about is if you were to ask someone if they were touched over the clothes or under the clothes, what is the objective of that question? What are you trying to find out?
You want to know if there was any type of contact that occurred on the clothes or underneath the clothes, if it was skin to skin, possibly.
Okay. No further questions past the witness.
You talked about you have to have certain training. Is there an accreditation process?
Not an accreditation process, no.
Okay.
This is more like I'm sorry, sir, but it's
No,
more
go
like a
ahead.
certification.
Okay. And you talked about protocols and procedures that you guys have. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
It's important to follow those.
Yes, sir.
Now, every interviewer is going to be a little bit different. Is that fair?
That's fair because we're different people, so we have different styles.
And every case is going to be different as far as children.
Correct.
Some there's outcries right away, and sometimes they're delayed.
Correct.
Sometimes the child seems fine, other times they're traumatized.
That's right.
Sometimes there are some children that are telling the truth and some children that aren't telling the truth.
It happens.
Now, you talked about you're a neutral party, but law enforcement is sometimes present during these interviews.
Correct. They are. Let me further elaborate on that.
Good.
In order for us to conduct a forensic interview, we need an investigating party present at the time of the interview.
And in your experience, do forensic interviewers ever consult with the investigator about
Yes, we do.
questions?
And it's during that pre-staff that I was describing that they're part of our MDT partners.
Now, you did not conduct the interview in this case, is
No, I
that
did
correct?
not.
And you were not the supervisor at that time?
I was not.
I'll pass the witness.
State.
Just a few questions briefly, Your Honor. Did you work with Nisi Hernandez at ChildSafe?
I did.
Okay. And is she a certified forensic interviewer?
Yes, sir.
And was she employed when you started in 2017?
She was.
Do you know when she left ChildSafe?
I believe it was last year. I'm not sure what month though.
I might object to the relevance.
All right, what is the relevance?
Well, defense began their line of questioning asking about this person, so we're getting this witness's further information about that
That
person.
objection will be sustained.
Why? What are sensory details?
Sensory details are, for example, tell me everything you could see, tell me everything you could hear, tell me everything you could feel, those type of questions.
Right. And why is it important to ask about sensory details in a forensic interview?
It brings more credibility to the statement.
Okay. And I guess with regard to a child's memory, do sensory details, what do they have to do with a child being able to recall things, I guess?
It gives better understanding, I guess, from like so when I'm there and I'm talking to kiddos, it really helps me really understand and get a good picture of what it sort of plays like a movie and when it's being explained.
When a child is experiencing trauma, do you know if they're going to recall every detail?
Every child is different and they experience and they process trauma in different ways. Some kiddos can't, some kiddos can explain. So some kiddos can be affected by it more than others.
And to that point, does every child experience and process trauma the same way?
No.
Do you know who conducted the forensic interview with Jesus Leza?
Dionisia Hernandez.
Okay. Does she go by Nisi?
She does.
Okay. And do you know at what point she stopped giving interviews for ChildSafe?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Sustained.
No further questions. That's it.
No further questions.
Is this witness excused?
Yes. From the
Yes, sir.
stage.
All right, thank you. State, call your next witness.
State calls Julie Vereen.
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you may have a seat. Make sure you keep your voice up so the jurors and the court reporter can hear. If you could state your name for the record and spell it, please.
My name is Julie Vereen, Julie, V as in victory, Ereen as in Nancy.
All right. State.
Good afternoon, Ms. Vereen. How are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed at Christus Children's.
And what kind of educational background do you have?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing as well as a Master of Science in Nursing Education.
And have you had any professional training that would qualify you as a licensed nurse?
Yes, I am a registered nurse, so I obtained my bachelor's of nursing, and then I sat for a board, which was called the NCLEX, which I had to pass in order to become a registered nurse to practice.
And I'm sorry if you said this already. How long have you been practicing for?
I've been a registered nurse since 2014.
And are you licensed to practice as a registered nurse in the state of Texas?
Yes, sir.
And what does your everyday practice consist of?
So my full-time current job is I'm a clinical nurse educator in our emergency department at Christus Children's, as well as a forensic nurse examiner within the emergency department.
And during the course of your duties as a nurse, do you ever examine individuals who have been sexually abused?
Yes, sir.
How many of these examinations would you estimate that you've done?
Estimated close to maybe 800.
And have you ever had to testify based on those examinations in court?
Yes, sir.
By your estimation, how many times?
I would say at least 10.
Okay.
So far.
And I guess just to paint a picture for the jury, what types of examinations do you do on individuals who've been sexually abused?
So if there is a concern of any sort of maybe concern for physical or sexual abuse, there may be a concern or complaint. So I want to make sure I understand what is going on by obtaining a history. With that, in order to understand how to do my assessment, I want to know what happened, which will lead to my head to toe assessment. Typically includes a more detailed anogenital assessment, which will also help indicate potential evidence collection, sexually transmitted testing, and as well as potential photo documentation.
And is the purpose of this exam for any type of criminal prosecution? Is that what the main point of the exam is?
For me, it's for medical treatment and diagnosis.
Okay. And have you read any scientific literature regarding sexual assault examinations?
In my training and throughout the course of me being a forensic nurse.
Okay. And have you received any special training on examining sexual assault complainants?
Yes, sir.
And on February 23rd of 2021, did you conduct a sexual assault examination on Jesus Lessa?
Would it be possible to review a medical forensic record?
Is your memory exhausted as to the date of that exam?
That would be true. Yes.
And would your report refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
You got my personal witness?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Reed, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit Number 2. What is that document?
It is a medical forensic record.
And did you? Who generated that record?
I did.
And how do you know that?
It is my handwriting and it has my signatures on it.
And has that record been altered or amended or edited in any way?
Not to my knowledge.
Have there and Your Honor, at this time, the state would seek to admit state's exhibit number 2 into evidence.
And Judge, we have multiple objections, but we could approach.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a brief recess right now. Remember my previous instructions, you're not to deliberate, you're not to do any investigation. Everything you need to know about this case is come from inside this courtroom. So I will have you all back at 2:25. Is that enough time for everyone or too much time? Okay, all right, 2:25. Everyone, please rise for the jurors. Excuse me, may I see state's exhibit number 2? Yes, ma'am. Oh, it's close. All right, everyone, please be seated. All right, so does state, do you have a state? I know you have a copy of the exhibit that you offered.
Yes, Your Honor.
And defense, do you have a copy of that exhibit?
I have a copy, yes.
All right, let's start with page number 1. Any objection to that page, defense?
No, I don't have any objection.
All right, page number 2, any objection, defense?
No objection.
Page number 3, any objection?
No objection.
Page number 4, any objections?
Yes, Judge, the history has, and I believe.
Well,
they-
let's do this
Okay.
so we can make it quick. All right, to the first paragraph where it says history of reported abuse of SALT. That paragraph before you get to the paragraph that states history, any objection to that?
I guess the actor himself, I don't know why that's what that would be relevant.
All right, that objection will be overruled. And now let's go to the part that says history in all caps. What would be your objection? The parts, if you could read out the parts that are objectionable.
Sure, and I think the state has redacted the parts about the other incidents. And if the court's inclination is to allow it in, then we would, I guess, agree with the redactions.
Well, do you have a-
Pizzagna said he was able to read through the black mark. I don't know if it's a copy now, so maybe it's a little bit darker.
All right, I'm unable to read through it
Okay.
now. If you all, would you like to see if you can read through it? Sure. Usually if you redact it and then do a copy of it, usually it doesn't come through.
Yes, the first one was just the black, so yeah. Okay.
So any objection to that page as redacted?
To the page, so going down to where it says general appearance, it says alert direct, we would object. I'm not sure how that would be relevant to a medical opinion for this person.
All right, that objection will be overruled. All right, any objection to page 5?
Yes, Judge, the entire page, I don't know how this is relevant at all to a medical opinion of this nature. Lots of kids tell for different reasons. Why didn't you tell in the beginning? I'm not sure how that is relevant to a medical opinion, and that follows for the rest of it. Does he think it's his fault or not goes to victim impact testimony, so which would be.
All right, does anyone want, I'm not a medical doctor. Does anyone want to question the witness with regards to page 5 to see if this is related to medical?
I can do that, Judge.
All right, and I'm going to hand the witness State's Exhibit number 2, and the defense is going to question you about page number 5.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ms. Vereen.
Hello.
I guess I'll start with the one where there's an answer that's not see history. So lots of kids don't tell for a whole lot of reasons. What are some of the reasons you didn't tell in the beginning? His answer was, I don't know. I mean, how would that be relevant to your medical opinion?
Yes, sir. So sometimes these questions identify safety concerns, which may lead to other medical concerns and reporting concerns as well.
Okay, so it's a safety concern?
Safety related to maybe some medical concerns that would be reportable as well.
How would that, so if he said, how is him saying, I don't know why I didn't say anything? How would that help you in your medical opinion?
There may have been, and this is just an example, some child is saying, well, I could have been harmed physically, which would lead to a concern for medical.
Okay, so, but in this instance, it didn't.
That is what is documented
Okay, so his answer didn't help you in your medical opinion at all.
for maybe that question.
Okay. The next one, what made you decide to tell? How would that be relevant to a medical opinion?
For same reasons, concerns of any concerns for harm.
Okay, and his answer, I knew it wasn't right. And that doesn't help you at all with your medical opinion in this case.
It was just how he answered the question.
Right, but his answer there doesn't help you form a medical opinion for him in this specific case, does it?
Maybe not necessarily.
Okay. The next one, did you feel better or worse after you told? The answer is in between. Same question. How is that going to be relevant to your medical opinion?
So same thing where they may have some signs or symptoms of some sort of medical ailment, feeling better or worse.
Well, so you mean physically?
Could be.
How would that impact someone physically?
And it could be related to as well if there was any concern for any other harm or anything that could have been medically concerning for that child.
Can you give me an example how that would work in that specific question?
I mean, they may have had an example was maybe they had some sort of anxiety and that's why they didn't feel comfortable talking and now they feel better afterwards.
Okay.
Or not.
Are you a psychologist or psychiatrist?
No, sir.
Okay. And again, his is in between. So it's going specifically to this, that didn't help you in your medical opinion in this case, did it?
Not necessarily.
Okay. How old were you when you told, or how long was it before you told? His answer was yesterday. How would that help you in your?
So sometimes children have delayed disclosures and they talk about previous disclosures. And so it's good to kind of know if there was any sort of other medical concerns in between that.
Well, this isn't asking when did it happen. It said, when did you tell? So how would telling?
From the last incident. So kind of understanding maybe the time frame as well.
Okay, but that there is no answer for that, just as yesterday. Again, this is just when you're telling, this doesn't go into when the incident happened. Would you agree with me?
How long was it before you told its length of time?
Yeah, yes. So it says yesterday. That doesn't tell you when the incident happened. Does it?
The length of time being yesterday?
That yesterday refers to when the child told somebody about it, right?
Correct.
Okay, so how does that doesn't help you in when the incident occurred?
Okay,
Is that fair?
that's fair.
Okay, so that wouldn't really help you in a medical opinion, would it?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Who did you tell first? And he says, my mom. How would knowing who they told help you medically?
So in medical assessments of children, it's also important to address safety for reporting reasons. And that is the reason for this in my medical assessment.
So this is for the safety of the child.
Correct.
Okay, which again, that's important, but it doesn't go to the medical opinion that you would give.
Sometimes it does address medical.
How would that address medical?
So again, a lot of reasons why someone doesn't tell, there may be some sort of additional act that may have happened that harmed the child medically.
But this is just asking, who did you tell first?
In general, I was relating to that very first question that you
Okay.
asked.
And I guess specifically, who did you tell first? How would that help you medically?
Depending on what their answer entails.
Okay, how did it help you in this case?
He just stated my mom, in quotations is what I documented.
Okay, how does that help you form a medical opinion?
Objection, Your Honor. At this point, I'd argue, or I would object to argumentative. The line of questioning that counsel is going down is the purpose of the hearing of, I guess, the objections are to determine whether or not the question asked goes towards the treatment of medical, or goes for the purpose of medical treatment. What counsel is trying to get from the witness is whether or not those answers helped, which is not what the standard of the hearsay exception would be, Judge.
All right, the objection is sustained.
Okay, I'll limit it. In that specific scenario, asking that question, who did you tell first? How would that help in your medical opinion?
It could be somebody who they trust, or, it was just the question he answered.
Right, but that doesn't, how does it help you form a medical opinion?
For a safety purpose.
So again, that's a safety purpose, not a medical purpose. Would you agree with me?
Safety could be
Objection, Your
related
Honor,
to.
asked and answered.
Overrule, you can answer.
So it's a safety purpose, but it's not a medical purpose, is it?
Safety could be related to medical. It is part of my assessment in terms of even reporting concerns of abuse.
But how would that question, who did you tell first? Whether it's mom, police officer, teacher, whatever the answer is, how does that tell you about a medical opinion? How does that answer, not just specifically, how does any answer help you medically?
It may give me information that I may need to follow up on, depending on what the answer is. If it's related to anything medical.
Okay, how would it, I guess I'm not understanding, how would that relate to medical?
For another example could be this child may have said that they were harmed in some way, and that's why, or somebody noticed something that they were acting differently, and that's the person that they told. Well, if it was a concern for any sort of physical ailment, I may follow up on that based on that question.
Okay, again, that's kind of getting into what happened. This is just, who did you tell first? Okay, I'll move on. We'll agree to disagree there.
All right, are you finished with that page, counsel?
No, there's still more questions on there.
How many more questions?
1, 2, 3.
May I see the exhibit,
4.
please?
Yes, ma'am.
The next one is, well, the next few are actually really related, asking whose fault it is. Does the child feel that it's their fault? Is it the actor's fault?
All right, you can ask the question.
Okay. Just I'll ask in general about those, do you think it's your fault? Whose fault it is? Is it the actor's fault? How does that help you medically?
In some situations, there may be children who have thoughts of harm, and that's where these questions may come from.
But it doesn't ask, do you have thoughts of harm?
Not directly. Sometimes children may answer in different ways based on different questions.
Okay, and that's I mean, almost anything could be medical. Do you think that it was all your fault or some of your fault? How does that answer help you?
So it may help me in terms of where that child.
I'm sorry, just a moment. Counsel,
Yes,
the
Judge.
court is reviewing State's Exhibit number 5, and there is no answer to that question. You said, do you feel like it was your fault or most your fault?
Do you think all of it was the actor's fault? I'm kind of, I guess, trying to generalize those questions. So do you think it was the actor's fault Again, how would that help?
Can you repeat the question? one more time?
Sure. This one specific, do you think it was, and in parentheses, actor's fault? How would that help you medically?
Sometimes children may, again, have delayed disclosures based on, for reasons I'm not quite clear on. And if there is a reason that, I guess, for that reason, they may disclose some medical information in that question.
The question calls for a yes or no answer. Do you think it was the actor's fault?
Again, safety related to medical, something I may have to report.
Yes or no? So how would that answer, how would it differ? If someone says yes or someone says no, how would your actions differ if the person thinks it's the actor's fault or not?
I may have to reevaluate the question based on their emotion to kind of redirect them if they're super emotional, saying, you know, we are here to make sure your body is okay. If there's anything that that needs further clarification, or if I need to address anything in my assessment, it may lead to that.
Okay. The next one, do you think that all of it was the actor's fault, most of it, or some of it? Again, how does that help you with a medical opinion?
I'm sorry, I don't have the report in front of me.
It's the one at the almost the very bottom. Do you think that all of it was the actor's fault, most of it, or some of it?
Again, just a safety question that could be related to medical.
How?
I can't think of an example at this moment.
I guess, and that's all for page 5.
All right, so with regards to page 5, the court will grant the defense's objection or sustain the defense's objection to the question, what made you decide to tell in the answer? Everything else, the court will overrule the defense's objection. So to the defense's objection to what made you decide to tell, and that answer that will be sustained.
Okay. And Judge, the last one, do you think it was the actor's fault? There was no medical reason given. And it also goes to victim impact. Any relevance at all would be outweighed by the prejudicial value or the prejudice of this, apparently the victim saying, well, it's most of it's the actor's fault.
All right, so the record is clear. The witness did not testify that it wasn't for medical. The witness testified that she could not think of the reason at this time. The defense's objection to that will be overruled. The court is doing a balancing act. The court will find that it is more probative than prejudicial. All right, with regards to page 6, any objection?
No, Judge, if I could, I think there was a redaction that we agreed to, if I could just make sure.
Yes.
Oh, that's page 6, sorry.
All right, any objection to page 6?
No,
Any objection to page 7?
I mean, I guess the behavioral symptoms that anger about what he did again goes to victim impact. I don't
Right.
see.
That will be overruled.
Okay.
With regards to page 8,
No objection.
page 9,
No objection.
page 10,
Yes, Judge, the diagnostic impression number 1, normal examination findings. It says here, however, the majority of examinations of sexually abused children are normal or non-specific, regardless of the type of sexual acts. This being in there, I'm not sure how it pertains. One, it pertains medically. I don't know if this witness has any research or knows anything about whether that statement is accurate or not. So it might be outside of their expertise. And then also to reiterate, we believe it bolsters the testimony or credibility of the complainant witness.
all right, that objection will be overruled. And with regards to the following page, I don't believe it's numbered.
And I guess, sorry, at the bottom of page 10, the
Yes.
treatment plan, counseling recommended, needs further evaluation. I don't know how that helps with medical, so we would object to that.
All right, that will be overruled.
Okay, and then the last page. Again, history supports concern for sexual abuse. That goes to the witness bolstering or giving more credibility. It invades the province of the jury, whether it's credible or not, whether it supports, because there is no finding in the case. And so again, that goes to the Salinas case, that there's no physical indication. So saying that would directly bolster the credibility of the complainant and be a direct comment on the complainant's truthfulness.
All right, so in Salinas, that has to do with penetration. This is no allegation of penetration. Am I correct?
That's correct, but it goes into that it's a normal exam, and that they talk about, okay, the diagnosis, it supports sexual abuse.
And Your Honor, if I may, in that same section, it does state, however, the majority of examinations of sexually abused children are normal or non-specific, regardless of the type of
No,
sexual act.
he's talking about the last
Yeah,
page.
that one was.
No,
Says history supposes concern for sexual abuse.
Yes, Your Honor, and based on counsel's argument, that statement is in direct correlation with that section on page 10, indicating that although it's normal findings, that the history could support concern for sexual abuse.
And that's part of the reason why we were objecting to that as well.
All right, so my understanding is that this witness, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm reading the case law that you submitted and I'm aware of the case, but I wanted to reread it. This witness is not here to testify that there was sexual abuse. This witness is just to testify to the interview she conducted. Am I incorrect in that?
That's correct, Your Honor, and that's part of the state's argument. The history supporting a concern for sexual abuse takes the entire examination into account, whereas counsel's arguing that because there was no physical findings, that statement shouldn't be allowed. However, the history takes into account the narrative that was given by the complainant, as well as all the answers given by the complainant during the course of the sexual assault exam.
Which is the exact same thing as Salinas.
All right, but in this document that I'm reading, it's saying that it can be consistent. It's not saying it is. And in Salinas, it says Dr. Kaufman was allowed to testify over appellant's objection that she diagnosed sexual abuse based solely upon the history provided by the complainant, and she had an exam which was consistent with that history. So my understanding, this witness is not here to testify that sexual abuse occurred.
Correct, Your Honor.
Am I reading this incorrectly?
It's saying that the history supports concern for sexual abuse. So I mean,
And the main word there is concern, Judge. It's not asserting a fact that sexual abuse occurred. It's saying that the history was concerning for it.
All right, defense's objection is overruled. So what needs to be redacted is from page 5. The question, what made you decide to tell? And the answer is, I knew it wasn't right. And the court is having that redacted based upon the witness's testimony. So if you all could
Yes.
remove that, please.
If I can just have a few moments, I'll have to make a copy of the page.
Okay, yes. And then everyone will bring the jury back.
I guess, Judge, could I request a copy of the redacted version? So I've got.
Oh, yes,
Thank
they'll
you.
make sure you have that. Let's see the thought. Oh, no, you know, actually, you brought me everything. Just let me think on this one. Who was the defense attorney on this case? Let me see, because then that'll make me remember whether I wanted it to be. Miles Trail. I'm trying to remember who his defense attorney was. Oh, I remember it now. My mind is still trapped. Oh, yes. If you need to take a brief break to,
Oh, thank you, Your Honor.
okay, sure.
I appreciate it.
All right, I remember this now. This is supposed to be out of custody because he's going to go live with his mother. Sure, I remember that. I feel like the little girl from Sesame Street where her mom sent her to get the milk, the eggs. I remember it now. My mind is still. It's supposed to be out of custody. Okay, thank you. you. Whew. Hi. I mean. Ruben, do you have the
Yes,
document to give to her?
I have, I'm gonna ask to lay the foundation again for it as 2A, since we edited State's Exhibit 2.
I mean, you didn't offer it, you could just. What you can do, because I was making a ruling on it.
Uh-huh.
You can just still label that
Okay.
as. State's Exhibit number 2.
Okay.
All right. So you can just label it as 2. Yes. All right, you can bring them in.
All right, for the jury.
Oh.
All right, everyone, please be seated. Yeah. And state, it's your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state is asking that State's Exhibit number 2 be admitted into evidence.
Defense.
No further objections.
All right, then State's Exhibit number 2 is admitted into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. And now, Ms. Vereen, redirecting you to the sexual assault examination, on February 23rd of 2021, did you conduct a sexual assault exam of Jesus Leza?
Yes, sir.
And what, on that date, what did you observe about Jesus's condition?
Can you repeat the question?
Did you make any observations about, I guess, how was Jesus acting during the sexual assault examination?
I have that he was alert, direct, polite, made good eye contact, quiet, and cooperative.
And did you ask Jesus if or why he was there for that examination on that day?
Yes, sir.
And why? What was the reason that he indicated to you? Why was he there?
For concerns of something happening to his body.
Did he tell you what happened to him?
He did.
And what did he say?
Would you like me to read directly from?
Not. If you can just refresh your recollection using the report.
He told me he got touched inappropriately.
And did he? Does your report contain the name of who Jesus said touched him?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Raymond Alejandro.
And did Jesus indicate to you who that individual or how that individual is related to him?
Yes.
Who was he to him?
Step uncle.
And did he indicate to you where exactly the defendant had touched him?
Yes.
What part of his body?
He said on his private part.
Did he specify what that private part was?
He stated my penis.
And when did he say that he was touched?
I've documented Sunday at 5 a.m.
And again, this examination was taken on the 23rd.
Yes, sir.
And throughout the course of the examination, did Jesus ever specify whether or not he had been touched? I guess, did he indicate to you whether he was touched skin to skin, or if there was over the clothes touching, or what kind of touching was indicated by Jesus?
I've documented under clothing.
Okay. And in your experience as a sexual assault nurse examiner, what does underclothing mean?
So typically when I ask that question, I'm asking about skin to skin contact.
Okay. Does that indicate whether or not clothing had been on or removed at any point?
It could be.
But to you, it directly means that there was skin to skin contact.
Yes, or if I'm concerned about any sort of injury.
Okay. Why is it important to know whether or not there was skin to skin contact?
I had the opportunity to consider evidence collection. If there is any possibility of considering maybe like tenacious secretions, anything that may come from like saliva or semen, anything that could be collected to yield DNA evidence.
And you use the term tenacious secretions. What are those?
So tenacious meaning more like sticky. So again, something from like an orifice, like coming from saliva or some mucosal area, or semen, saliva, things of those needed for secretions.
Okay. And throughout the course of the examination, did Jesus ever indicate whether or not there was any penetration on this on the date of this incident?
Not that I recall.
Okay. And in a case such as this that only alleges a touching, what would you expect to find in terms of evidence? If anything.
The history,
I'm sorry?
the history
The history is evidence?
of concerning of what may have happened to his body.
Okay. But would you expect to find any physical evidence during your examination?
Based on my examination, I may find something. If it's just concerned for touching, in my training and education, I was educated that our crime lab doesn't do like touch DNA. So if I'm going through my assessment, I find something of concern that may lead me to want to collect evidence, I may do that.
And in this case, did you find any evidence of concern?
No,
Physical
sir.
evidence?
No.
Okay. So what was any evidence collected in this case?
No, sir.
And what were the results of your examination?
He had normal exam findings,
Okay. And what does that mean?
meaning that I didn't find any concerns of physical evidence of any traumatic or injury.
Did you find any concerns throughout this exam?
Other than just what he told me.
Okay. And did you make any determinations about the history of what Jesus told you during the examination?
Just that it was concerning for sexual abuse, sexual assault.
And that's taken into account overall the entire examination. So the interview with him and your physical findings.
Yes.
Okay. And then going back to the history that Jesus provided to you, did did he indicate to you how long the touching by the defendant lasted?
He stated like 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. What was he doing while this was occurring?
He said he acted like he was asleep.
And did he tell you what or what part of the defendant's body touched his penis?
I have documented Raymond Alejandro's hand.
Okay. No further questions. Your Honor, pass the witness.
Defense.
Thank you. Ms. Vereen, you said it was for, this is for medical treatment and diagnosis. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
On this, on the first page there, said referred by and check mark self-referral and LE. What's LE?
Law enforcement.
Okay, so law enforcement did refer the case over. Is that right?
Yes, that's what I've documented. Yes, sir.
All right. And you also mentioned that sometimes part of your duties are to help collect evidence. Is that right?
Correct.
And you didn't do that in this case.
No, sir.
And you said as far as touching cases, well, but there can be physical evidence from touching cases. Would you agree with me?
Depending on the nature of the act.
Okay. There could be skin cells or any fluids, seminal fluids or anything like that could be possible.
There could be.
Now you talked about the last page there. It says, and you talked about the history supports concern for sexual abuse. You see that on that last page?
On page 10.
Or sorry, well, page 10, yeah, page 10 has the normal examination findings. So can be consistent with history provided. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and you talked about the history and that's what you're referring to is on page 4, the history that you have there.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that history was provided by Jesus in this case.
Yes.
Okay. And you say the exam, well, you say, okay, well, it has a concern for sexual abuse based on the history. And that's based on someone telling you that, that they were sexually abused. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if someone comes in and tells you that they were sexually abused, you're going to have a concern for sexual abuse. Is that fair?
Repeat that one more time.
Sure. If someone comes in and tells you I've been sexually abused, you're going to have concern for sexual abuse.
Yes.
Okay. And your finding in this case was a normal finding. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think you said that can be consistent with sexual abuse, right?
With the history, yes.
And then it can also be consistent with no sexual abuse.
Correct.
Do you know Raymond Alejandro?
I do not.
I'll pass the witness.
Any further questions?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Reed, I'm going to direct your attention to page 4 of the report. When did Jesus when did the alleged touching occur?
He stated it was like 5 a.m. on Sunday,
Okay, and what was the date of that Sunday?
February 21st, 2021.
And again, this report was created on February 23rd of 2021?
Yes, sir.
So 2 days had passed.
Correct.
Okay. And and then I'm going to direct your attention further to page 6 of the report. Do you ask examinees whether or not they have bathed or showered?
Yes,
And in this report, does it indicate whether or not Jesus had answered whether he had bathed or showered?
yes,
And how many times?
2.
So in a situation such as this, where 2 days have passed since the alleged act and a complainant has showered or bathed multiple times, would you expect to find any physical evidence during the sexual assault examination?
Not necessarily. And again, in my training, I've been educated that our crime lab doesn't do any touch DNA, and the child is able to give me some sort of sensory act. And so that's the history provided.
And what do you mean by sensory evidence or sensory detail?
Like the mention of touch.
Okay. Did he ever allege whether either himself or the defendant had ejaculated during this incident?
I have no documented.
Okay. So, and did he ever make any allegations of whether or not the defendant put his mouth on Jesus or Jesus put his mouth on the defendant?
He did not say that.
Okay. So would you expect to find any saliva or seminal evidence in this case?
No, not based on that history.
Okay. And counsel asked you or brought to your attention that your report indicated there was normal examination findings, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what about how are I guess in general sexually abused children? I'm sorry, I'm trying to word this question properly, but do the majority of sexual assault examinations involving children result in normal findings?
They could be.
Okay. And what does a normal finding mean?
Meaning I didn't find any evidence of concerning trauma to the area of concern.
But taking into account that there was a normal examination finding, there could still be a concerning history for this complainant.
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right, is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down. And if you leave that exhibit with the court reporter, please.
Yes.
All right, state, call your next witness.
It calls Investigator Rachel Salazar.
See here. All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record, and please spell your last name.
Rachel Salazar, Salazar.
State.
Afternoon. Investigator Salazar, how are you currently employed?
I work with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office
And how long have you worked for the Bexar County Sheriff's Office?
over 20 years now.
And do you have to have any special training to become a detective?
Yes, sir. So to become a detective, you have to be on patrol at least for 2 years. There's a test you have to take. You have to pass a screening board, and then they promote you in order of your ranking on the board.
Okay. And what unit do you work in as a detective?
Specifically, I work in SVU, Child Safe.
Okay, the Child Safe unit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many detectives are in that unit?
Currently 4.
Okay. And so do you handle cases that involve indecent touching?
Yes, sir.
Do you handle cases involving child victims?
Yes, sir.
Okay. when you get a case that it's your job to investigate, do they always come to you the same way?
Not necessarily, no, sir.
What are some of the ways that a case might come across your desk?
So in my particular unit, we work differently than, for example, other law enforcement organizations. Some just get their cases assigned to them. We do get our cases assigned to us if it comes in from, for example, another agency who's transferred a case. But oftentimes we do get cases where we have a victim, whether it's a active outcry, an active incident, that something has just happened, or the victim is making an outcry to a teacher, parent, something like that. In which case, you have the caretaker who's calling in the report, our patrolman goes out, and then they call out over the radio specifically requesting a child safe investigator so that they can get the case assigned.
Okay. And so like you mentioned, when maybe a patrol officer goes out and they've gotten dispatched to a location and they get a report for something inappropriate like that, would a case like that come to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever become involved with an indecency, indecent contact, or indecency with a child by contact case involving Raymond Alejandro Jr.?
Yes.
Do you know Mr. Alejandro's date of birth?
Not off the top of my head, sir.
Would it refresh your memory to be able to look at your report?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes.
I think what is marked States Exhibit 3, it's a copy of the report.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you recall, or can you refresh your recollection as to Mr. Alejandro's date of birth?
Yes, sir. It's April 21st of 1998.
Thank you. And do you recall how you became involved with this case?
Well, reading back, it appears that a patrolman was sent out to the location and then basically requested an investigator over the radio, at which point I answered.
Okay, so in your job, it's possible that you can be requested to help out with a case and you would immediately go and assist.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. And cases like this, are they quick cases and easy cases to develop, or do they take time?
No, they take time.
Okay. And what would be the first step when you want to start working on a case like this? What do you need to make sure is done first?
So this particular case, or I guess a case like this, it just kind of depends on what's going on, but this particular case involved touching. So the first thing is going to be to determine whether or not the incident had occurred within 120 hours, if the incident potentially involved any type of physical action or biological fluids, in which case we'd have to have an acute SANE done. If not, then the very first step would be to get our child victim in for a forensic interview.
Okay. And why is it important to have somebody go to a forensic interviewer rather than just having the patrol officer show up at the scene and start asking questions?
Number one, first and foremost, we don't want to traumatize our victims. We don't want to re-traumatize our victims. They've already made an outcry, made a disclosure to a trusted adult. Our officers can very easily gather the information from that trusted adult without re-traumatizing that child. Additionally, police officers, I'm also a mother, in conversation, we talk in a certain way and we ask questions in a certain way. The questions that we ask tend to be kind of leading. We kind of give answers as we're asking questions. And when we're working one of these cases, we want the child victim to speak with a forensic interviewer. They're specially trained to deal with children. That's all they do is deal with children who've been a victim of some type of physical, sexual abuse, potentially a witness to a traumatic event. Additionally, our child victim, we want them to be able to have that discussion with a forensic interviewer who's asking their questions in an open-ended manner and allowing that child victim to recount the events of what occurred to them in a way that's unique to that child victim and the way that they experienced those events.
And I think you mentioned briefly that there's some training. Is there special training for a forensic interviewer?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay. And after the forensic interview, or actually you mentioned sometimes you have a SANE exam, sometimes you might not. What is a SANE exam?
It's a sexual assault nurse exam.
Okay.
And sometimes we'll have an acute SANE exam where we've had potential biological fluid or some type of physical evidence that would potentially be there and need to be collected within 120 hours. But there's also non-acute SANE exams where they go in and they speak to a nurse or a doctor just to kind of discuss what happened to them in their body to ensure that they feel safe and that they know that their body's okay. So the nurse doctors will check them.
Okay. Do you recall if a forensic interview was conducted in this case specifically?
Yes, sir.
Was a SANE exam conducted in this case specifically?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you review the findings of the SANE exam?
Yes, sir. I would have done that as part of my investigation.
And is it also part of your investigation to review the forensic interview?
Absolutely.
Do you review all the evidence?
By all the evidence, what do you mean?
Whenever there's evidence collected in a case, would you review all of it?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you know if there was a video recorded of the forensic interview?
Yes, sir.
And did you watch the video?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know where they conduct the interviews?
Yes, sir. Child safe.
Whenever they conduct those interviews, is it like a one-on-one interview or something different?
No, it's a one-on-one interview.
Okay. And did in the SANE exam and in the forensic interview, did Jesus talk about the alleged acts?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for hearsay.
All right, the answer will be either yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you think any leading questions were asked by the interviewer?
Objection, Judge. We had this hearing.
All right, no, what is your objection?
It's hearsay. It calls for
Sustained.
hearsay.
Did you, as part of your investigation, do you ever reach out to the person who is alleged to have committed the inappropriate touching?
Yes, sir.
Did you reach out to that person in this case?
So if I remember correctly and refreshing my memory from my report, attempts were made. However, we were unable to locate him. We were not given any information on, where he may be residing, telephone number, any contact information. So we really didn't have anything to start in our search for him.
Okay. Is it normal if you can't find a suspect to just wait indefinitely or go ahead and you may answer.
No, sir, absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
In reviewing the evidence of the SANE exam, the interviews, all documentation for this case, did you think that Mr. Lesa's accounts were consistent or inconsistent?
Objection, bolstering.
Sustained.
And based on your investigation, after you reviewed all the evidence, the forensic interview, the SANE exam, all accounts that you were aware of, did you proceed with any formal charges against Mr. Alejandro?
Yes, sir, I did.
And after reviewing that evidence, did you think there was enough evidence to support those formal charges?
Objection, relevance.
Overrule.
And what charge? Okay. And sorry, you may answer. I don't know if I heard your answer.
She answered.
Okay. And what charge did you go ahead and charge Mr. Alejandro with?
I believe we charged him with indecency with a child by contact.
Okay. And your decision to charge him with that, what was it based on fully?
It was based on my victim's consistent and repeated outcries.
Okay.
Objection, Judge Bolstering, we'd ask for that testimony to be stricken.
All right, the objection is untimely.
Did she just
She
answer it?
answered it.
The
question.
question didn't call for that answer.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the last answer that you heard is to be disregarded.
No further questions past the witness.
Defense?
I don't want to make sure I'm right. Investigator Salazar?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Investigator Salazar, would you agree with me the best time to try to collect evidence in a case is immediately after it happens?
It depends on the type of evidence, sir.
Okay, so specifically in this case, you mentioned within 120 hours. What kind of evidence are you talking about there?
Well, we're talking any type of DNA evidence within 120 hours.
All right, so again, the sooner the better to try to at least make an attempt to collect that evidence. Is that fair?
So the 120 hours actually comes from the timeline that the child victim makes a disclosure. So for example, something happens to the child victim today, which would be a Thursday, but they don't make the disclosure until Monday. That's still within the 120 hours. So we would send them for an exam. That's where the 120 hours comes from.
All right, and you say send them for the exam again to also try to collect any type of DNA or fluid or any evidence at all.
Yes, sir. Off of their body. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now you mentioned, when an officer or yourself as an investigator go out, when you go out to this call, one of your priorities is you don't want to re-traumatize the victim. Is that right?
Absolutely.
That you go out there and that's part of your thought process. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Now you mentioned trying to get a hold. Well, let me take you to, you eventually got a written statement from Miss Regina Garza. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I believe so.
It took you a little while to get that statement. You had to try to make repeated contacts. Is that right?
I can go back in my report.
Yeah,
Would you mind?
feel free to.
Thank you.
I believe it'll be on page 6, but feel free to take your time.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Would you agree with me that it can be important in cases like this to speak to the person who's accused?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, you never interviewed Raymond Alejandro. Is that right?
I did not.
Okay. Now you said attempts were made, but really you couldn't even start the search because you couldn't get any information. Is that
Exactly. Yes, sir.
okay? And you asked Miss Garza and the family for a phone number.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You asked them for an address.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Basically you asked them for any help to try to get a hold of Raymond. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you were unable to get any help to even start that process.
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
State.
Briefly, Your Honor, in a case like this, where, there's 2 days of elapsed time from the alleged touching,
Mhm.
the complainant claims they've taken a shower twice since then. Would you expect to find DNA evidence?
No, sir. And to be completely frank, there's most of our cases, regardless of the time frame, it's very rare that we actually get physical evidence. And or if we do get physical evidence, a lot of times the evidence collected is not sufficient enough to run a DNA profile. So a lot of times it's not abnormal not to have evidence, especially in a case where We just have touching.
Okay. And in a case like this, if, let's say hypothetically, not this case, but you've got enough to charge, right? And you haven't talked to the accused yet. And you go ahead and talk to the accused and they say, I didn't do it. Would you just not would you not charge because they told you a contradictory story?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. No further questions.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. State, you may call your next witness.
The state rests.
All right. And if you'll leave that with the court reporter. Thank you. All right, defense.
Judge, if we could take up a matter outside the presence.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a break. We will be back at 3:35. Remember my instructions. Everything that you need to know about this case is to come from inside the courtroom.
I did.
Right? Everyone, please rise for the jurors. This time, I think they are leaving the door.
You may be seated.
Thank you. All right, defense.
Judge, at this time, the state is rested. We'd make a motion for a directed verdict based on the state failing to prove each and every element of the offense.
All right, that'll be denied. Defense, do you have any witnesses?
If I could just get 2 minutes and I.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh, the jury will be back at 3:35.
Okay.
So you all have till 3:35. And if you want to discuss things in the courtroom, then I'll have the state step out.
Okay.
State,
Yes, Your Honor.
if you all could step out, I believe defense wants to discuss some things with his client.
Yes.
We're ready.
All right, for the jury?
All right, everyone, please be seated. Defense, you may call your first witness.
Thank you. Go Raymond Alejandro Jr.
All right, if you'll take the stand. All right, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. If you'll state your name for the record, be sure to keep your voice up so the members of the jury and the court reporter can hear.
My name is Raymond Alejandro Jr.
All right, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I don't know if you wanted me to spell it.
Yes, you can.
RAYMOND ALEJANDRO.
All right, defense.
Thank you. Raymond, how do you know Jesus Leza III?
He is my nephew. My step nephew.
And who is his stepfather?
My brother, Jose Garza.
Okay. And how many siblings do you have?
I have 4 siblings, 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
And what are your brothers' names?
My oldest brother is Jose Anhel. We call him Angel. And then my middle brother is Jose Garza. We call him Joey.
Okay. You said your oldest brothers, you call him Angel?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
sir. Sorry.
No problem. Just make sure you speak up, okay?
Heard.
And Angel's here in the courtroom.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so let's go to February of 2021. When did you get to, well, I guess, whose house were you staying at in February of 2021?
I was mainly living with my brother and my sister-in-law.
With your brother and your
My
sister?
brother Joey, yes. I was mainly living with my brother.
Okay, and again, just, I know you're a little
Sorry.
bit nervous, but just take a deep breath, speak clearly and slowly so the court reporter can get everything down, okay?
Heard.
All right, sorry about that. You were staying at your brother Joey's house,
Yes, sir.
and who else lived at Joey's house?
My sister-in-law Regina, my nephew Jay, my nephew Joey, and then my niece Ariana.
All right, now, when, do you know what day, around the 21st, do you know what day you got to Joey's house?
It was either the Thursday or the Friday before.
Was there an event that happened that helped
It
you
was
remember?
right after the winter storm when everybody's power, gas, and lights started to come back on.
All right, so you get there, and you stay there until Monday?
Yes, because Monday, it was an agreement to take care of or babysit my niece Ariana.
All right. Now, where did you sleep?
In the living room.
On a couch?
Yes, sir. On the couch.
All right. Now, you said that there was an agreement, you were watching Ariana.
Yes, sir.
Well, would you ever watch the other kids?
Yes, sir. I'd watch all of them sometimes.
All right. And would that be mainly when their parents were at work?
Yes.
All right. And what do they do for a living?
My brother is a police officer and my sister-in-law is a nurse.
All right. And the house, Jesus had his own room.
Yes, sir.
Did you and in February of 2021, did you and Jesus share a phone?
No, sir.
Now you were here when Jesus testified, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now to that incident, that Saturday night or early Sunday, was everyone in the house?
Yes, sir.
And you obviously you heard the allegation that you touched him inappropriately
Yes, sir.
that morning, Sunday around 5 a.m. You heard that?
Yes, sir.
On that night, did you go into his room
No,
that
sir.
night?
No, sir.
Did you pull his pants down on that day?
No, sir.
Did you touch his penis on that night?
No, sir.
Now going to Monday, did you end up watching Ariana on Monday?
Yes.
All right. At some point, do you leave the house?
Yes.
Explain how you came to leave the house.
So it was a late afternoon, early evening. Everybody was getting home, and just real awkwardly turned. Everybody like secluded themselves. Everybody went into their rooms, and I got a text message from my older brother saying, "Gather your things. I'm on the way for you."
Okay, so your older brother Angel told you, "I'm gonna come pick you up."
Yes, sir.
Is that unusual at that time? Or
It
did
was
you pick it?
unusual, but I wasn't gonna go against him saying, "Gather all your things. I'm on the way to pick you up."
Okay, when Angel tells you to do something, you do it?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you leave, where do you go to stay?
It just depends. Sometimes my aunt had a room for me there. Sometimes I would go stay with my grandpa. And then my mom also had a room for me there too. So just depends.
And I guess specifically on that Monday, where did you go stay?
I went straight to my mom's.
All right, and have you been living at your mom's?
Yes, sir.
Does she live here in San Antonio?
Yes, sir.
How long has she been at that same address?
She's been at that address since I believe 2019.
All right, does the rest of your family know where she lives?
Yes, sir.
Now your phone number, you had on that February of 2021, you were on a family plan with Joey and his family.
Yes, sir.
Did that changed at some point?
A couple of months after the allegation, my phone was disconnected, so I got my own phone.
Okay, and you got another phone with a new phone number?
Yes, sir.
Does your family have that phone number?
Yes, sir.
Did the police ever try to contact you?
No, sir.
Did they ever come to your house?
No, sir.
Did they send you a letter?
No, sir.
Do you, how long after, or I guess, did you eventually find out that there was a warrant out for the case?
Yes, my older brother had mentioned something to me about it, so I looked my name up online to see if there was anything on my name. I couldn't find anything, so I mean, it was in the back of my head, so I reached out to the lawyer. I called and asked to see if they could tell me anything. That day, they told me nothing, and the very next day, I got a phone call saying that I needed to come in and have a consultation because there was a warrant out for my arrest.
Okay, so the attorney calls you back and says you have a warrant out for your arrest.
Yes, sir.
When did you turn yourself in?
The very next day.
And again, you voluntarily turned yourself in.
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
What was your relationship like with Jesus Leza prior to February 2021?
I mean, he was my nephew. I'll take care of him. It was a good relationship.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It was a good relationship.
Okay. Did you guys ever get into arguments?
Petty arguments, nothing memorable.
Yeah. And he sat on the stand and said you guys were like brothers. Do you remember seeing that?
Yes, sir.
Would you agree with him?
To an extent, yes. I mean, we were very close. I was close with the whole family. I'm still very connected to him.
Did you guys, was there ever a falling out between the two of you?
Not that I could recall.
Okay. Did you like him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When Angel told you he was coming to pick you up, like, get your stuff, I'm coming to pick you up, Did he tell you you weren't allowed to stay at Regina and Jose's anymore?
No, I had asked him what happened, but he couldn't really tell me anything.
So you asked Angel what happened.
Yeah, well, I asked him, why was he coming to pick me up?
And did you ask Regina and Jose why Angel wanted to come get you?
No, sir, we never talked ever since.
Okay. But that day before you were picked up to leave, did you think to ask him?
My sister-in-law was in my nephew's room with the door closed, and my brother grabbed my niece, and he was in his room with his door closed. And when I went to go knock on my brother's door to try to see what was up, I got no response. The only thing that I had was just my older brother telling me he's on the way to pick me up.
Did you have any thoughts in your head about what it might have been?
I mean, I had tons of thoughts. I was just trying to, you never know. I was wondering myself.
And so you said after the allegation, like a few months, your phone was connected or disconnected, and that was the phone that Regina and Jose were paying for. Did you ever wonder why they were still paying for your phone if you weren't allowed to stay at their house?
Of course,
Did you ask?
I did.
How'd you ask?
Well, I mean, I asked my brother to see if he could figure out anything, because I never got a response from my brother or my sister-in-law.
Well, given the fact that Regina and Jose were paying for your phone, why didn't you just ask them what was going on?
I never got a response. I never got a call back. I would call them and never got a call back.
Okay. Did you ever sleep in the same bed as Jesus or any of his siblings?
Yes.
Who all would you sleep in the bed with?
At times my nephews. I mean, it was my nephews.
Did you ever touch them when you were asleep in the bed with them? So you slept in the same bed with them, but you never made any physical contact with them?
Not inappropriate contact. I mean, maybe rolled over on them.
Okay. So I didn't ask about inappropriate contact. Do you want to change your answer to the first question about ever touching them?
Objection, argumentative.
That'll be overruled. You can answer.
Yeah, I guess I had contact with them.
Okay. And where did you touch them?
Well, would you rephrase the question, or?
So I asked whether you had ever touched them when you slept in the bed with them. You said you had contact with them. Do you recall where you touched them?
I mean, nothing memorable like that.
Okay. When's the last time you talked to Jesus?
That day, February.
You talked to him the day that
In February 2021, when he walked in, they had ordered groceries were ordered to the house, so we put him inside, and my brother had told me to go ask Jay to help put up the groceries, and he didn't really respond very well. So I mean, not a full-on conversation. By the time I woke up in the morning, I mean, he got ready for school and left for the bus. We didn't have any contact in the morning, and at night or in the evening when he came home, just asked him if he can help put up the groceries, and he didn't respond.
How was your relationship with Jose and Regina prior to that?
It was great.
It was great.
It was great. They were some of the best family I've had.
Did you guys ever argue?
Nothing memorable. Not.
Did they ever say they wanted you out of the house?
No, sir.
Would they help you out? Would you help them out around the house?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No further questions. Pass the witness.
Defense.
Just to clarify, you said you slept in the bed with your nephew or nephews at certain points.
In certain time. Well,
Well, I guess let me just phrase it this way. I'll withdraw that one. They asked you about touching in bed. To clarify, let me just ask you, did you inappropriately touch them in bed?
no, sir.
I'll pass the witness.
No further questions.
All right, you may step down.
Thank you.
Defense, call your next witness.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
State.
State rests and close.
Defense.
Rest and close.
All right, you may be seated. All right, defense, you may be seated. Yeah, no problem. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is what is going to happen next. I'm going to have you all here tomorrow exactly at 9 a.m. And at that time, what will happen is I will read to you the charge of the court, and the state and the defense will be able to give closing arguments to you if they choose to give closing arguments. Remember, even though both the state and the defense have rested and closed, you are not allowed to begin deliberations in your head or with anyone else. You're not allowed to talk about the case. You're not allowed to view anything about the case. If somebody tries to talk to you about the case, ignore it. If you happen to see anything, turn it off. Do not do any investigation work. Everything that you need to know about this case has come from inside the courtroom. Does everyone understand? Now, at 9 o'clock, the garage is not going to be as full as it is because we don't have juries called up on Fridays in the basement. So there should be room for you to park. Again, if you want to bring breakfast, if you want to come early and bring breakfast, you can. So as you know, there's a refrigerator, microwave, all of that back there. And we will start exactly at 9 a.m. All right. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you. Everyone, please rise for the jurors. You have that right.
Yeah, probably.
All right, everyone, please be seated. And we're not on the record yet. So has everyone had a chance to review the charge? I sent it by email to all parties.
Right. The state has and state has no objections.
All right, defense, have you had a chance to review the charge?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you have any objections to the charge?
On page 3,
Part about
the defendant testifying.
Oh, yes, we'll remove that, of course.
And the 404B, there wasn't any evidence that was presented that wasn't stricken.
Okay.
So I guess I would ask for that to be removed.
All right, so the extraneous to be removed and the defendant not testifying.
And I don't know, I didn't see it in here. I don't know if there's an instruction to remind them that anything that the court has instructed them to disregard, that they're not to consider that for any purpose.
All right.
We would ask for that if it's not in here.
Sure. I think there should be something in there similar to that. But if not, we will have that placed in there. Is there anything else?
I think that's all, Your Honor.
All right, so I'm gonna have the staff attorney print that out, and then we'll look at it one more time, and we'll do closing arguments tomorrow at 9.